My name is Josh Miller. I own River Stone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home.
Another thank you to Eukanuba for bringing you this podcast. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020. That is what I feed my dogs. That's what I feed the dogs at the kennel. I love this food. The dogs do great on it. So if you guys are looking for a high quality premium food to put your four-legged athlete on, I would highly suggest the Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020. Also to Lucky Duck. If you guys have not seen the Lucky Duck kennel, I don't know where you've been, but go check it out because I've used about every crate out there, and this is my favorite crate that I have ever used. I love that it is 5-star crash test rated. I love that it's light enough and easy to move around, not only for me, but for my wife. It's just a great all-around kennel. So if you're looking for a kennel, go check out the Lucky Duck kennel. All right, so full disclosure, not feeling the best today. I think it's allergies because I get wicked allergies, especially in the spring. And up here in Wisconsin, it is in the mid-40s today. Starting to feel like spring. It is not COVID. I have a negative test to prove that. I also kind of feel like I have this like Morgan Freeman thing going on right now. So maybe this episode will be even more entertaining to listen to. But here's the only thing. I'll try not to, for those of you that listen to the strike episode, I will try not to have a coughing attack. That's my goal for this episode, not to have a coughing attack. So, yeah, so hopefully I can make it through this thing, with no issues and no problems. But if you listen to the last episode, one thing I wanted to move into here was a few episodes specifically around breeding, just because we're in that time of year that it's not really cranking into training season yet, at least not for us up north. Hunting season is basically done. And I think it's a great time to fill that void. And, there's a number of things I want to hit on, but I kind of left off the last episode talking about the things that you can't teach, right? Like you can't teach, the mental, side of things. You can't teach, the drive. You can't teach the genetic makeup. Well, that's breeding. Right? When it comes down to it, that is breeding. And so I kind of want to use this episode specifically to talk about pedigrees. And I'm going to kind of talk about two camps here. I'm going to talk kind of both extremes. I'm going to tell you where I kind of fit into this thing, okay? Because really from the way that I see it, and this is from a lot of time, not only in this industry, but a lot of time, working with clients and talking with them, there's kind of two camps that people fall into. There is the pedigrees are everything, and I'm going to put all my weight into that piece of paper camp. Or there is the pedigree is nothing, and I really don't care about that camp. And where I fit in, I'll kind of tell you more about that as we go along here. But I certainly don't fit into either of those camps. And I'm going to tell you why as we go along here. But I first want to dig into the pedigrees are everything camp. Because this is the camp where I think a lot of my friends and a lot of trainers that I have a lot of respect for, a lot of guys I trained under when I was learning and growing up in this, a lot of people fall into this camp. And here here's where I struggle with this. Okay, so we have seen this time and time again, not only from clients of ours, but just talking with people, whether it's talking with people at tests that we run into and we get to know. But there's definitely some disappointment that people have when they feel like they did the homework, They got the pedigree that they wanted, and the dog that they ultimately got isn't what they thought they were getting. Now, let's make sure everybody knows this, up front, is that there are no guarantees in animals, period, right? You can do everything right. Stuff can still go wrong. That's just the frankness of what we're doing here, right? Anytime you're dealing with animals, there's no guarantee. But people feel like there is when they're, pedigree shopping. I struggle with the pedigree side for a number of reasons. Now, I love the pedigree side for a number of reasons too, so keep in tune for that. But here's where I struggle with the pedigree side of things. Excuse me. There's no guarantee, right, as far as what you're getting. But when you're reading a piece of paper, it can only tell you so much. Right? Here's an example. Last year, we were at a hunt test, and I continue to run my dogs that are titled just because I enjoy it. I think that I think it's something fun for them to do. It keeps them engaged, and it's always fun to see new setups and challenge yourself. So I was running Brock, and we ran our set. Brock did a fantastic job. I really don't think he could have ran this test any better. And then we go to the honor bucket. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, when you're at a finished test, you run your test, and then you have to go honor the next dog running to show that you and the dog, I should say, but your dog has that control not to break and not to be disrespectful to the other dog working. So we do that, and again, Brock runs a great run. Go to the honor bucket, and the dog that is next comes up and is pushing that you're supposed to walk up on a good heel, is pushing that the whole way, gets to the bucket, and immediately starts as they're loading the gun. As soon as we blow the calls, because that's how you start the test, quack, 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 and it was like screaming, right? Screaming. Shoot the 3 birds. The dog creeps so much and has to be recalled. Creeps so much, like, to be honest with you, I don't know how it was acceptable, but apparently in the judge's eyes it was. The dog goes and does the work in what I would consider mediocre fashion, even with everything being considered. But the dog gets through, and at the end of the day, the dog got the pass. So you're telling me that on paper, that dog looks equivalent to Brock. I promise you, these two dogs weren't even in the same ballpark. And I'm not just saying that because Brock's my dog. I'm saying that because Brock was calm, quiet, collected, ran this test flawlessly, stepped on every mark, one whistle to blind. I mean, he was phenomenal. But this other dog that did everything else still got the same pass. So on paper, looks to be an equivalent dog. That's what I struggle with pedigrees. Is that if you run enough, you can get these dogs certain titles. And I think that's one of the things that frustrates me, is that if you just pedigree shop, you don't truly know what you're getting. Interesting thing, for me, again, I have River Stone Kennels. If you go on to our dogs, you look at our studs specifically, just because the stud dogs are my personal dogs. But if you look at our dogs, you will not see any titles under any of our dogs. They'll have them, but you won't see the titles on them. And the reason being is that if you are strictly pedigree shopping, I am not the right person for you to get a puppy from. Because I think there's just, these unrealistic expectations that come with that, right? I don't think that, again, if you're strictly pedigree shopping, I don't think you'd buy into what I'm doing and why I'm doing it And so you're probably just not my client. That's why I don't put it on there. What is really interesting to me is, again, in regards to the pedigree side of things, so we have our own method to the madness. We'll talk that probably later on as far as how we conduct our breeding program. But a lot of my friends that own kennels, they breed dogs, they have puppies, no matter what breed, they tend to keep and have they own the females. And the thought process is that I can then get semen from any dog in the country, any dog in the world for that matter. And you definitely can. But again, my rebuttal to that is you don't truly know the dog that you're getting. So I want to talk a little bit about about my stud dogs and the dogs I import as a part of my breeding program. I personally, excuse me for a second. Excuse me, I told you I was going to try not to do that, but just part of not feeling well. So my boys that I bring in to be a part of my program, one, they never are actually a part of my breeding program until they prove to me what they have. Do they have everything that I'm looking for? And so it takes them, minimum a year of training with me to show me that. But a quicker way for me to get dogs into the breeding program and get them breeding, producing puppies for me, would be to import, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old dogs that are, say, field trial winner or have some sort of title on them, and get them in and start breeding them right away. And that's there's nothing wrong with that. There's there's definitely, I think, the value that you can argue for that. For me, I'm looking for very particular things, and I want to watch that dog grow up. I want to see what that dog has. And more importantly, I want to see what is natural in that dog versus what I had to train into that dog. And I think this is a very important topic because, and this isn't just an overseas thing. This is here in the States thing too. So you can have a dog that has done great things and is very accomplished. But what was natural versus what was trained into that dog? Excuse me. So what I mean by that is that a professional dog trainer, dog handler can oftentimes do very, very special things with a dog that most people couldn't. And so when you get dogs that are, say they're very accomplished, they're these big powerhouse dogs or everything else, and I've sat alongside, friends of mine that talk about, man, this dog is an absolute, fire-breathing dragon. He's always on the edge. He was like, super, super tough to force break. He was blah, 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 blah. Well, isn't he going to pass on what was naturally bred into him, not what you were able to manufacture out of him? So puppy-wise, isn't that dog going to pass on more fire breathers, more everything else? And now, if you're looking for that, and you're going to, these dogs are going to go, be, given to or purchased by pros that want to try to hit that level again, probably a different story. But for the average guy that wants a duck dog, probably not the right fit. Again, my opinion, right? I'm going to tell you a little story about a couple of years ago. I was down in Arkansas, and I was a part of a lease. This story is actually one of the reasons I don't do group leases anymore. But I was a part of a lease that had multiple guys in it. I think there were 7 or 8 guys. And, I had, I think at the time I had Brock, I had Clyde, and Bud for sure. Might have been those 3 that I was really trying to get a bunch of work on. And, all these dogs are, young dogs at this point. And Bud, specifically, he is in his first season of really hunting. This is actually his first year hunting. and he was just killing it. I mean, this is the year that he proved to me that he was really, really special. So I was really particular, with him on some of the hunts he was going on. But as the season went on and he was continuing to crush it, I was putting him in bigger and bigger hunts and more and more difficult hunts. And it was like he was stepping up to the plate time and time again. And I was ecstatic about where he was and what he was doing, to the point that another one of our sponsors here on this podcast, Gundog Supply, if you guys are looking for any dog training equipment at all, gundogsupply.com. They are truly dog-centric guys, dog-centric people, dog-centric family. I love those guys. So gundogsupply.com, go check them out. But the owners of Gundog Supply, which are Steve and Rob Snell, Steve, he had really started hunting with me a lot, that season. And he got to watch Brock, watch Clyde. Again, at this point, those are kind of my two big dogs at that time. And he was just infatuated with Bud to the point that if you talk to Steve today, he calls Bud his dog just because he loves that dog so much. But I think it was a couple hunts before that, he ran a big blind on a green-winged teal that sailed. It was diving. It was in this brush. And Bud just handled it like a seasoned pro. He just did a fantastic job at it. And when he was coming back, Steve was standing next to me on the levee that I was handling on. And he's like, Josh, he's like, that dog, that is going to be a special one. I was like, yeah, I kind of think so too. So anyway, Bud is going on, this hunt this day that I'm telling you the story about. So these guys came in that were a part of this lease, but I'd only met the guy one time. And he brought, a couple of his buddies, I think 2 of his friends. And, no big deal. So there'd be probably 6 or 7 of us hunting that day. And so I had everything set up. I had, the decoys ready to go. I had where we're going to hunt. Everything was all set up. And so I'm early in the morning getting coffee, half awake. And the guy that's a member of the club comes up to me and goes, hey, he's like, we're going to hunt my buddy's dog today. And I kind of perk up because this is why I'm here, right? Is to run my dogs. And I was like, well, you could probably run him with, my dog, but my dog is hunting today. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. I'm like, well, it might not be fine, with me. Is this dog, going to be respectful of, my dog? Because, my dog's a young dog and I really don't want him messed up. And I got interrupted as I was trying to say this. And it was, man, this dog is NFC or FC, AFC. He's got it all. He's done this, and that, and starts naming off all these accolades. And I'm like, all right, well, didn't really tell me, answer my question, but all right. So we go out there and we get in the blind. And from the get-go, you just knew that this was going to be a shit show. I mean, it was one of those days that I'm setting decoys. Everybody else is in the blind. Bud is sitting in his hole just where he should be. And I'm hearing him, yell at this dog. This dog's going back and forth. I hear guns getting knocked over and everything else. I'm just going, oh my gosh, here we go. Well, we get in the blind. Sun just starts coming up probably a couple minutes before shooting hours. Start seeing birds. I start calling. And as I start calling, this dog on the other end starts screaming. Okay? And I kind of look over at Steve. Steve looks at me and we go, oh, great, because we can see how this is going to go, right? So I'm continuing to try to call. This dog continues to try to scream. Flares the first group. All right. Second group comes in. Flares the second group. I look at Steve. I'm like, I'm just not going to call, right? Maybe not calling will make him not make noise. Well, it didn't help because as soon as he saw birds, he started screaming again, right? Then, funny enough, a bird starts coming at us, and I can see it's a coot. And Steve kind of nudges me. He goes, "You see this?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a coot." So he gets close, gonna come right over the decoys. These guys, jump up and they're like, "Shoot that!" Boom, boom. I'm yelling. I have a video of this. I'm yelling, "It's a coot! It's a coot!" Boom, 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 boom. They miss it. That dog jumps into the water, is all over the place. They're whistling for this dog. They're trying to get this dog back. They're screaming, hollering, whatever. I mean, this whole time, I'm looking at my young rock star here in Bud, sitting in this hole, and I'm thinking, if you start whining, if you make a noise, if you start breaking, if you do any of this stuff, I'm going to lose my mind, right? So I'm like anxiously watching him. And he's handling it all really well, especially, again, for a young dog to have another dog break and be a run around in the decoys, all that commotion going on. He never flinched. Did a fantastic job. So they get the dog back in, and this goes on group after group. I mean, it is to the point, you guys, that I'm screaming on my call so loud just simply to try to drown out the noise of this dog that is screaming down on his end. Well, fast forward a few groups. He flares the 7th group, which was a group of mallards, a pretty good group of mallards. And I had this group working, and I knew I was battling that noise. And, they finally, there was a definite roar, and that group flared. Now, I'm a pretty chill guy, but at some point, we got to change something, right? So I dropped my calls. I looked down at the other end of the blind. I was like, here's the deal, guy. I'm not going to sit here while this goes on anymore. And one of us has to leave. And I pay to be here, so it's not going to be me. And he gets up, takes his dog, and does kind of the walk of shame on the levee all the way back to the side-by-sides. Puts the dog in the crate, in the side-by-side, walks back. So, we shot some more birds, or shot some birds. We hadn't shot any up to that point, but we shot some birds that morning. The whole morning, it sounded like a Sasquatch was getting beaten in the woods because of the yodeling and the screaming and the noise that was coming from that kennel. Here's the reason that I tell you that story. On paper, that dog was a phenomenal dog. But for those of us that are looking for duck dogs, for, waterfowl dogs, we're looking for more than just that title at times. Okay? That's why I really don't believe that you can put all your weight in the pedigrees or everything camp. I want to switch gears to the pedigrees are nothing camp, because I also don't believe this. The pedigrees are nothing camp really kind of makes me scratch my head, because you have to have something. Right? You have to have something that tells you what you're working with. And, pedigrees, are that to an extent. But to think the pedigrees are nothing, kind of boggles my mind a little bit. And here are the few that really make me frustrated or make me scratch my head, right? So the first one is when I'm talking about somebody describing their puppy, okay? Because we get this a lot when people bring dogs in for training. The first one is, his parents are great hunting dogs. Well, what does that mean? Because, one, great is relative, right? What is great? Because I can almost guarantee you that my great is different than your great, which is different than your buddy's great. So what is great? That is what I like about pedigrees, is that there is a standard that you have to hit to be able to achieve those titles. So what is great? And especially, and I'm not going to rag on upland hunters, but especially when they say that a dog is a great pheasant hunting dog, I really take very little weight into it, because a lot of the quote unquote great pheasant hunting dogs that I've seen is, they're working in cover that you can't see them working. And half the time they're out of control, if not borderline out of control. Then you can't even see, are they flushing this bird or not half the time. And a lot of times, again, this is the quote unquote great dogs I've seen, is if they retrieve the bird anywhere within a 5-foot radius of you, drop the bird and keep going hunting, they're a great dog, right? And if that's your standard, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I also don't believe that that dog has to be bred, at least not from what he's showing me. Okay, so great is relative. But I would also say that, there's also the quote that I hear a lot, which is when we talk about this and, the talk about, because all the time we get people that want to breed their dog right away, regardless. I mean, I just had a client in that the puppy was 5 months old, and they were talking about how they had to breed this dog. Well, this dog hasn't shown you anything that it should be bred yet, right? That's my point. But all the time we get people that want to breed their dog. They want to get advice of how to do that, and so I talk to them. What have they done? What have they accomplished? And especially when they haven't done anything, right? So like they have they haven't run trials, haven't run tests, haven't done anything, right? The response that kind of makes me laugh a little bit is well, he could have done it, but I just didn't do it. Well, no, he couldn't have. Maybe he could have, but he didn't prove that he could have, right? Like you saying he could have. Like there are a lot of dogs that I put through training that I think they've got it until we get to the end and they don't have it. So you can't use that excuse either. You can't say that, well, it's because I didn't go run him. Oh, it's because I didn't, go campaign him. It's because I didn't test him. Like he still has to prove it. And that's what I love about, and that's why I continue, to hunt test my dogs, is that I do feel like there's value in showing you, hey, here are the standards that were set, and my dogs accomplished these. And my dogs showed that at the highest levels that were set standard-wise, that they not only achieved, but accomplished it time and time again. So this is a really kind of a long way of saying that I don't sit in either camp. If there was a camp I was sitting in, I would certainly lean more towards that the pedigrees are very meaningful. But I think there's a lot more that you have to look at. And I think, excuse me, I also think that there's a lot more to it than just the titles. So I get extremely particular with the dogs that we're breeding, specifically on a few things. I want those dogs to be quiet, which I believe is a natural trait that you pass on. Now, I think you can make a quiet dog noisy, but to make a naturally noisy dog quiet is dang near impossible. So my dogs, they need to be quiet. They need to have the right temperament, which I want the big motor in the field and then the off switch, when they are anywhere else. I want these dogs to be natural retrievers, which I know sounds silly, but I think that more and more dogs are being bred that are not natural retrievers, specifically Labrador retrievers. When I say a natural retriever, I mean a dog that wants to go grab something, have a good soft natural mouth, bring that right back to you. Way too often I see these dogs that they want to grab something, they want to shake it, they want to play with it, they want to run everywhere but to you. That is not a strong natural retrieve. And then as I get through, and there's way more to it. We'll go through the health side. We'll go through all this stuff when we get Whitney on, because I think she's more knowledgeable than I am even at this stuff. So it'd be good to get her feedback. But I think when you're looking at this breeding thing as a whole, the big question is do you believe that you are doing the breed a favor by putting better dogs on the ground than there were before? Excuse me. I really think that's something to ask yourself, because I can't remember if I said this in the last episode or not, but it is something I really believe, which is I believe that most breeders are breeding dogs because those are the dogs that they have, not because those are the dogs that they truly believe are bettering the breed or putting the best puppies on the ground. I can tell you that I have lost a lot of money over the years by paying for, investing not only financially but time as well into these dogs, to build them up, to put them through the paces, just to find out they're not exactly what I want. Now those dogs, they get to go live lives that most of the time are better than mine. The last dog that we sent off was he left on his private jet. He lives in Louisiana on a mega ranch, and he gets to duck hunt all the time. I love that he's living a great life. I would have loved to keep him because I loved him to death, but he just wasn't quite what I was looking for. And for me as a breeder, I have to be that particular. I have to be willing to separate myself from a dog that's maybe not quite what I want, because I have to be that specific. Because if I don't, I'm not putting the puppies on the ground that I am overly proud of and want to be producing. There's a lot more to this to me and to Whitney, who is very involved with the breeding side of things. A lot more to it than just producing puppies. And that's one thing that if you're going down that journey, right, as looking for a puppy, I would challenge you to ask some of those questions. And I think, kind of straddle that fence the best you can of, okay, pedigrees definitely mean something. They're definitely impactful. They definitely show you something. I kind of look at it as they're the tools in the toolbox that show you, do I have the tools that I want, or that I need, rather, to get to that result that I'm ultimately wanting. But I think there's a lot more to it than that, as I just talked about. You want to talk about what was natural in this dog, what was trained in versus what was bred in or natural. And I think those questions, if you ask those questions and get those honest answers, I think that's where you kind of find and fine tune. Okay, this is the puppy that I want, because again, you are going to naturally inherit what was naturally bred into mom and dad and grandpa and grandma and great grandpa and grandma, not what was manufactured and trained into them. And we'll talk a little more about this here on another episode, because I want to talk about some things like force fetching and kind of that side of things, and how that can kind of change some of these thoughts. But I'm going to save that for another episode. But think about that. Think about the pedigrees. Think about why it's important, because it is important. But also, don't get caught in the trap to think that they're absolutely everything, because if you're just paper shopping, I feel like more times than not, you're going to get disappointed in what ultimately that dog is. I think there's a lot more to it than that. So again, pedigrees are important, but not everything. You got to dig one layer deeper. Last sponsor here, Sitka Gear. If you guys have not checked out Sitka Gear, it has changed the way that I train, that I hunt. There's not another clothing line like it, especially for those of us that spend so much time outdoors. So highly suggest you looking at Sitka Gear. Go to www.sitkagear.com. You will not be disappointed. Here's the last point that I wanted to make on this, because this is kind of mind-boggling. Again, we're talking about producing gun dogs, producing duck dogs, producing hunting dogs, right? But also family members, everything else. But when it comes to the hunting dog side of things, here's what kind of blows my mind, and this is because I'm realizing that we have more of a following, out of the U.S. than I originally thought. So for those of you who are out of the U.S., thank you so much for following along, and you'll kind of see some of my frustration here as I talk about this, but it blows my mind, again, going to pedigree side, the number of dogs that hunt test, that field trial, that never actually go hunt. And I have a number of my friends that have dogs like this, and we go round and around as we talk about this. But, their thought is, if the dog were to hunt, it would screw them up for competing. And again, this goes back to what I've talked about in the past, is that hunting will inevitably unravel some of your training, because it's in uncontrolled situations and things come up that are just naturally going to probably put you a step back of what your quote unquote polished, finished training would look like. But that's hunting. Here's my argument with that, is that hunting situations, yes, they're uncontrolled. Yes, there are curveballs that get thrown at these dogs that they're not prepared for. But that's where you see what you have in a dog. When they can go in and handle those truly, those hunting situations, and can handle them in either a very graceful, positive, manner, or do they shut down, come back to you, get nervous, get frustrated, right? you see what you have in a dog when they get challenged on things like that. The truth of the matter is that, at least for us here in the States, all of our tests and trials are run on cold game. They're all set up. One of the things I love so much about the field trialing overseas, as I've trialed with my friends over in Scotland and England, I love that they're on live hunts, because you get to see these dogs have to combat these live hunting situations, and you just don't get that here. And so the thought process again of it, and this is going back to if you're in that 100% pedigrees are everything camp, and you're looking for, let's say, a duck dog, have those dogs actually ever duck hunted? It seems almost comical to say it, but I mean, there's a lot of times that is the case. And again, I do get the from a competing standpoint that you're afraid that there's going to be some train that gets unraveled, everything else, but it's kind of it's head scratching, I should say, for me to say, I'm going to compete and campaign this dog. He's never going to hunt. He's never going to be in the field. He's only going to compete. But yet I'm going to breed him as a hunting dog. And those puppies are going to go to hunting families. But this dog is never hunted. I just think there's more to it. I think, that when you kind of put it like that, I think it can be somewhat eye-opening, to how, some of these thought processes are. And again, they probably think that I'm crazy with my thought process. This is my opinion. But I just think, although I do think, it would be naive to say the pedigrees are not valuable. They are absolutely valuable. But there's a difference between putting weight in a pedigree and paper chopping. And I guess that's where I'm kind of getting at with this whole thing, is that if you're paper chopping, I guess that's where it comes down to where I see people get frustrated more than anything, is that on paper it looks good. Well, on paper a lot of things looks good, right? A lot of things look good on paper. But there's another layer, again, that I mentioned before, you have to dig down into and kind of look at. And that's why, I ask a lot of, the people that are getting puppies from me or specifically my training clients, it's like, if we're going to go through this journey together, here's what I do. Here's how I do it. Let's either buy in and go through this together or not. And if not, that's cool, but let's not go through this together, because it's just going to add friction and frustration and everything else that it's just not worth having. So, when it comes to the puppy thing, I feel like what I've been doing, I've been very, very proud of not only the dogs that I have, but the puppies that they're producing, which I think is a big part of this. There's a lot of great animals out there. Doesn't matter if it's dogs or horses or bulls or what have you, that they're great themselves, but they don't produce great offspring. That's a huge part of this. And so not only do you have to have the right dog, but you have to have the dog that produces the right puppies. And there's a lot. So where I'm going with this pedigree wise is again, important, but don't paper shop. Take it a step further, do some more homework, ask the right questions, and ultimately get the puppy you're looking for. Because, God willing, 10 to 15-year commitment, you want to make sure it's the right one. So, again, thank you to Eukanuba, Lucky Duck, Sitka Gear, and gundogsupply.com. Hope you all enjoyed this episode, and we'll be back here next week with another one.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to Eukanuba, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.